a rainy week here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Business Daily. I'm your host, Lee Ji-yoon. We have a lot lined up for you this morning, so let's get started with today's highlights. We'll sit down with an expert to talk about the government's push for labor reforms and why Korea's labor unions and the main opposition party are against such changes. Cars that run on LPG are becoming more popular for drivers around the world, but not here in Korea. We find out why. But first, let's begin with today's top business stories. The Korean currency has been falling against the US dollar for months, and projections say that the $1 exchange rate could surpass the 1,201 mark by next year. After hitting a two-year low on Monday, the local currency closed at 1,153 won against the greenback on Wednesday. Some 40 global financial institutions, including Morgan Stanley and BNP Paribas, said that the exchange rate would reach 1,201 mark by next year, while some domestic institutions projected it could happen later this year. While the depreciating won will help exporters, there are concerns that it could also drain foreign investment from the local stock market. Labor unions and management at Korean car manufacturers are moving to wrap up wage negotiations swiftly this year. If successful, this is expected to help automakers avoid prolonged battles with employees and boost productivity. Auto industry experts say Renault Samsung Motors is the first car maker to reach an agreement this year, setting the tone for early wage settlements. The company agreed to raise the base pay for its workers by about 2%. Korea's largest automaker, Hyundai Motor, has been holding talks with its union and says no major issues of contention have surfaced so far. Only 3 out of 10 borrowers of a national student loan program are able to make repayments post-graduation. This is according to the National Tax Service and Korea Student Aid Foundation, which said that 28% of borrowers of a loan program called 든든 학자금 were only making roughly $16,000 a year. That's the minimum standard for repayments to begin and the lowest cost of living for a 4-person household. More people around the world are choosing LPG-fueled cars over cars that run on gasoline or diesel. But due to a certain regulation here in Korea, demand for LPG vehicles has never managed to take off here. Our Lee Ju-young has the story.
Vehicles that run on LPG or liquefied petroleum gas are gaining popularity among drivers around the world. Simply referred to as autogas, LPG releases less greenhouse emissions than gasoline and diesel. But the main reason for the popularity of this fuel is the affordability. According to Korean National Oil Corporation, 1 liter of LPG costs around 70 cents, while diesel costs about $1.17 and gasoline $1.36. As a result, the number of people who chose to drive LPG-fueled cars has been on the rise globally from around 19 million in 2010 to roughly 25 million in 2013. But this is not the case in Korea. The number of registered cars that run on gasoline and diesel increased from 2010, but on the other hand, LPG-powered cars slid to roughly 2.3 million cars last year. Why? It has to do with the regulation that limits LPG car ownership to taxis, rental cars, and state agency vehicles. If not, the driver either has to have a disability or be a state-recognized patriot.
Critics say the government is upholding such restrictions due to tax revenues, since the tax levied on LPG is only about a quarter the amount slapped on gasoline sales.
A bill looking to overturn existing regulations and allow more people to drive LPG vehicles was submitted to the National Assembly last month and is pending approval. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
President Park Geun-hye and the ruling party have put labor reforms on the top of the agenda for the second half of this year. Now, there's strong determination to push through with these reforms, even if it means a slide in support for the party. Labor unions and the main opposition party have voiced their opposition to the reforms. Let's take a look at the details.
The public sector, labor, finance, and education are the four major areas that President Park Geun-hye and the government have set out to reform. And of these fields, the ruling party has singled out labor reforms as Korea's top priority.
In the second half of this year, we will first and foremost set out to reform the country's labor sector by making all efforts possible.
Experts have pointed out that Korea's labor market lacks flexibility and cooperation with the government and businesses. Seoul's labor reform plans include the wage peak system and giving corporate management more leeway to lay off workers. However, the measures face backlash from the labor circle and the main opposition party, as they have denounced such plans, calling them a means to oppress workers. Will the two sides be able to see a breakthrough and find mutual grounds of agreement to transform Korea's labor market?
And to tell us more about this, we're now joined by Professor Kim Se-won of Ewha Women's University. So good to have you join us today.
Thank you very much.
All right, so before we get started, can you first tell us what are some of the biggest problems that Korea's labor market is facing right now?
Yes, there are quite a few problems in Korean labor market. And Korean labor market has been suffering from 2008's Great Depression still. And the most serious problem might be the young people's low employment.
Okay.
It quickly became a social problem and at the same time economic problem. It hurts really future economic growth potential. And at the same time, there will be more and more conflicts between generations, between young and old generations. So, for example, the young people's unemployment rise up to almost 9%, while the middle-aged in their 40s and 50s, the unemployment rate is only 2%. So there is a huge gap between two different labor markets. So this time, government wants to make a room for young people by through labor market reform.
Okay, and like we heard in the report, one of those is the wage peak system. Can you tell us what exactly it is and how is it expected to help the labor market?
Well, basically that gives more incentive to employers to hire more young people because by definition, a wage peak system means workers will be paid the most when they are the most productive in their 40s and 50s. But the point is after that, the wage decreases when they are less productive until they retire. So given that employers or companies can save their expense on the labor and with that more expense, they can make more room for the young people.
All right, well then is this system already being implemented by some businesses in Korea?
Yes, particularly the public sectors adopted that wage peak system from last year actually. And about more than 40 public companies adopted a wage peak system out of more than 300 public companies. And because of that benefits for more young people employment, Korean government wants to spread that out to both of the public sector and private sector.
Okay. Well, but then the main opposition party as well as the labor circle are strongly opposing this. What are their reasons and what kind of negative side effects can we expect from implementing the system then?
Yes, the people on the labor union side really criticize the wage peak system because most of the workers do not work until the retirement age of the 60 years old. So, and the point is when after peak of the wage, the wage decreases. So actual payment from the employers decreases over time. So they say that it is not fair. And in addition to that, the retirement benefit decreases along with the wage peak system.
All right, then another main issue of contention is the government's call for a more flexible labor market. What does it mean by that?
Well, more flexibility in the labor market means that it might be easier to lay off regular workers for employers, which is not easy at the current situation of the Korean labor market. They are pretty much protected. So what they are saying is by laying off less productive regular workers, they can make rather more rooms for the young people. And by doing that, they can hire more productive young workers.
But then if the government gives corporate management more leeway to lay off its workers, then wouldn't it make the labor market more unstable than it is right now?
Exactly. So without having a better organized social security system like unemployment insurance and the job training program for unemployed, it makes labor market more unstable for sure. So it is very important to have a better organized social security system.
All right, and we'll have to see whether the labor, business, and government representatives can reach an agreement on these reform plans.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much for coming in today,
Thank you very
Professor.
much.
And adding on to this, the presidential chief of staff, the ruling party, and the prime minister agreed on Wednesday to launch a special labor reform committee to evaluate and push for labor reforms. We'll keep you updated on changes within the labor market as they unfold. And that does it for now, but we'll be back tomorrow at the same time, same place, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks so much for staying with us throughout our program, and goodbye for now.